six-figure profits in your small business? If you're like most of us entrepreneurs, increasing your profitability is always on your mind, and you're looking for more ways to increase revenue while growing your company. Well, you found a podcast that shares ideas to help you do just that. I'm Marcia. I'm a business growth strategist. I've helped tons of small business owners to establish and implement a tangible plan that guarantees increased profitability, guides your growth, and plans for your future exit. Building a highly profitable and sale-ready business creates a win-win scenario. That's more money now and a windfall later when it's time to let go. So I want to share strategies that I've learned with you on today's Profit with a Plan podcast. But before we get started, I have some exciting news for you. I've just released my second book called The Profit Accelerator, and I'm looking for a few industry leaders and business owners to interview about how my book's 12 strategies would impact your industry. Please go download my book and let me know if you'd like to be interviewed. It's available for free for only the next few weeks while I am interviewing industry leaders. These strategies, by the way, can help any business increase their revenue, profit, and the value of their company without having to pay additional dollars on advertising or marketing. Go pick up your copy at trajectoryprofits.com/book-download. All right, guys, we've got a great show for you today. I'm looking forward to having Adrianna on. Adrianna Smith is a top business broker and M&A advisor with First Choice Business Brokers of Los Angeles. Adrianna specializes in small business transactions across all industries and transaction size from 50 million and under. That's us, guys. Awarded the top sales associate nationwide, Adrianna worked with over 250 small businesses to date. As a third-generation broker, Adrianna has proven track record of success in maximizing the value while managing an efficient and smooth transaction process. Adrianna graduated cum laude with a degree in business administration and with a finance concentration from the University of Southern California's Marshall School of Business. Prior to launching First Business Choice Brokers office in LA, Adrianna gained several years of experience in transaction advisory at the top global professional services firm, Deloitte, with a focus on media and entertainment industries. Her experience includes business valuation, financial analysts, client service, and project team management, giving her the necessary background and skills to execute business transactions. Adrianna, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast. I'm so excited that you're here.
I am too. Thank you, Marcia, for having me on.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of warning, Adrianna and I are in Provisors, which is a business networking group that has a lot of high-level professionals just like her in there. So we met and we're talking about the ideas of bringing more strategies to you guys about preparing your business and making sure it's sale ready and how to get the maximum value for it. But Adrianna, your introduction really did you justice. But tell me, why did you fall for selling businesses? How come you got in that lane?
Well, as you mentioned, I am a third generation broker. So my grandmother and my father have been in business brokerage for over 50 years. And I interned with my dad while I was in college, and I always wanted to do something in finance. I really enjoyed the idea of valuing businesses and assets, and then, that leads to selling them. And so, I had my corporate boot camp training at Deloitte, which got a lot of experience under my belt. And then I decided to come downstream and work with entrepreneurs in smaller businesses, which, I find to be a lot more rewarding. So it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, it's been almost, 9 years since we opened this office.
Wow, that's great. And I came from a family of business owners myself, so I know how that gets ingrained in you, right? You think, never
Yes.
go in with my parents, and then next thing you know, you're like, hi, So yeah,
Exactly.
it's a wonderful environment to be in, to follow in your parents' footsteps, and I'm sure they're tremendously proud of you. So that's great.
Yes.
Okay, so talking about businesses, working with the large corporate organizations, us small business owners, oftentimes we're too late to the game when it comes to thinking about selling our business. Usually when we think about it, it's like, okay, I got one foot out the door, or there's been some sort of something that has happened, a life event that's happened that causes you. But I'd love to have the listeners get a better grasp on what they can do today to make their business worth a lot more. So would you share maybe a couple of ideas on what they want to look at today that would get them in a better position?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So you're exactly right. Most of the time, small business owners come to me when, they needed to sell yesterday and it's too late, right? And to do the things you need to do to make your business optimal for sale takes time.
Mm,
So, the biggest thing, that they should be thinking about is if they plan to want to retire or take their foot off the gas or relocate, do a different business, whatever it is, they should think about that 2 to 5 years before they actually want to do it.
mm,
And because that'll give them some runway. And I always invite business owners to even talk to me at that point and do a little valuation check-in, because most of the time business owners don't know what their businesses are worth, and then when they find out, a lot of times they think it's worth too little to sell. So that means we need to work on it. And
yeah.
I think the three key areas that I see business owners either not able to sell their business or have to take a steep discount in order to sell is when these three things aren't in order. And the
Mm,
first being financials. Financials are, probably about 90% of the equation when it comes to a buyer wanting to buy your business.
yeah.
What are they buying it for? They're buying it for the potential growth, and they're going to base it though on how your business has actually performed,
Mm,
and how it performs is what's on the bottom of that profit and loss statement. And so having clean, organized financials is key, because if everything looks in order, they can understand the cash flow, it's transparent and consistent, then they can write that offer even faster.
love
um,
it.
but
Now, hang on a
go ahead.
sec. So a lot of business owners, they start sweating when it comes to looking at those reports and their P&Ls and so on. This should be done on a regular basis, so you're seeing them in advance. And am I correct in saying that there are often several versions of your financials? There's versions that you deliver to the IRS, right? There's versions that you work on daily in your daily journals, and then there's versions that make your company look really good, right?
Right. So the key is, yeah, most small business owners are inclined to, want to save on taxes. So they might be, putting a lot of personal expenses through their P&L and
Right.
L and on the tax return. But, that might be the goal during your ownership. But when you decide you want to sell, the goal is to make it look as good as possible. So the more you can take all of those personal discretionary expenses out of there and actually, you know, pay the taxes on that leading up to it, means you'll have a larger, value. You'll optimize your value on sale and actually make it sell, because there is a scenario where if your books are so bad, it could turn a buyer away
Mm.
altogether. It could actually make your business unsaleable.
Ooh.
And I've seen it. And this is how it works, right? A buyer sees one thing that's not making sense. The seller doesn't know why. And then something else. And then before you know it, where there's smoke, there's fire, and they pass altogether because there's other opportunities out there.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So many of us and our bookkeepers, we'll call them, will try and run every expense through, and we call those more lifestyle businesses, where you're running your car, your spouse's car, your credit cards, your cell phones, whatever, anything you can run through the business to reduce that deduction. But what it does is it affects your profitability, right? It affects that bottom line. And I love it that you made the point of saying, maybe if you're thinking about selling, you want to stop doing that, or wind that down a little bit. And you probably want to do that several, if not 5 or 6 years before you even come into that process. I don't know about you, but everybody's looking for tax deductions and looking for opportunities, but at the same time, it really hurts your company's bottom line when you run all that through there.
It does. And the other factor that most business owners don't think about is that once you go for sale, it will impact your ability to have the business qualify for an SBA loan.
Oh,
And, for businesses 5 million and under, a buyer can get an SBA business acquisition loan to purchase the business. And it is one of the preferred ways for buyers to finance the deal because they could put as little as 10% down.
wow.
So it is one of the key tools that a seller of a business in that size range can actually get all of their purchase price in cash, because without an SBA loan, that means a buyer is probably going to want to ask the seller to carry paper, to
Mm,
hold a note for them, maybe do earnouts. Especially in this environment, we're kind of in a very unprecedented economic time. There's a lot of
yeah.
uncertainty. So we're seeing that quite a bit. So if your business does not show enough cash flow and profitability on the tax returns, then it might not qualify for a loan or
Oh,
at the price. And so then you're left with a smaller buyer pool. So it can
interesting that
really
you
hit. Yep.
I was just going to say, interesting that you bring that up because it's like when you go to buy your house, you have to personally qualify to buy the house. When you're buying a business, the business has to qualify for the buyer to buy it.
It's actually
Makes
both. It's a two-part qualification. So the business has to show enough to debt service the loan. So, and
hmm
they can only use tax returns for that, right? They won't
interesting.
take all of the little adjustments and things that we might make for your personal, cars and all of that stuff. So they have to go by the tax return. And but the
Interesting.
buyer also has to qualify, and the two have to make sense. But if the business isn't showing enough on the tax return, then there's no way it's going to debt service for its purchase price.
Wow, that is really insightful. So, making sure that your business is strong, not only so you can sell it, but so they can get financing and you can get paid.
Exactly.
Like it. All right. I know I've derailed you a couple of times when we were going through these three things. So, the first one was making sure that I've blanked on
Clean
it. So, what was it?
financials.
Clean financials, and then
Clean
the second,
financials.
one is cash flow part of the clean financials, or is that a second area?
That's all part of it, right? Because clean
Okay.
financials, and we're kind of getting to a cash flow that is
Yeah.
reliable and we can transact on. Uh,
Awesome.
the second point is key man risk.
Oof,
Uh,
yes.
Key man risk in a business is when the owner is very much, the day-to-day operator, a lot of times the salesperson, also the operations person, where the whole business relies on them being there and them
Mm,
performing that day-to-day function. And sometimes business owners don't realize how scary that is for a buyer to see, because when a buyer comes in, they want to know that, okay, once the business is transacted, and if you leave, seller, will your business leave with you? Will it fall apart?
mm.
And a good way to have an assessment of how much key man risk is in your business is to do the vacation test. So see if you can go on vacation for 2 weeks and not work, and is your business still, alive and functioning when you get back?
Oh my
And
goodness.
if it's not, or if there's a lot falling through the cracks, that kind of shows you how much is relying on you. So a buyer
Wow.
wants a well operating machine that has management in place, and everything isn't tied to the seller.
Wow, that's pretty big ask for a business owner to take a 2-week vacation and in hopes that the business is still standing, right? I mean, we all have that problem. But you know what? I love the way you brought it up and saying that you have the systems and people and processes in place so that you have a company that you can take a vacation. I know that many of us small business owners, we we work so hard in it that we don't have the lifestyle that we dreamed of when we started the company, right? And the
Yeah.
only way you can offset that is to have people and processes in place. So that's super valuable. Um, how often does a seller stay on with the company for a little while? Is that a common occurrence?
There's usually always a training or transition period, which depending on the type of business and how complex it is, could be anywhere from like 1 to 3 months.
Okay.
But I would say, having the seller stay on long term, let's say 6 months, a year or more, I would say that probably happens 30 to 40% of the time.
Okay.
But that's also how ingrained the seller is, right? The more ingrained the seller is, and let's even say a seller does have a general manager, but they do all the sales.
Mm,
Okay, so that could be a reason that a buyer wants to keep them and is
got it.
afraid to lose them. So the more the owner is ingrained in the key functions, and the more they're going to want to keep them on, which a lot of times when I'm selling businesses, the owners are retiring. So they want to be done.
They're
They want to
done.
get out, right? So somebody tells you have to stay and work for somebody else for another year, that's hard.
Yeah. I can imagine how challenging that would be, especially when it's like it was your baby and you grew it, and then this other company comes in and wants to do things differently. So
Yes.
interesting ideas. So making sure that the owner is not involved with the company, and that takes a little bit of time to set up and
It
position
does.
yourself in the right place. But I think that that's something that should be happening anyways.
It
The
should.
high technician, employee of your own company, right? That means that you're an employee of the worst company ever and the worst boss ever that makes you work for long hours at pennies on the dollar, right? Don't want that. Don't
Yeah.
want that. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we have the clean financials and good strong cash flow, and then we've got the limited owner involvement. What else do we need to look for that we can strengthen our company and get top dollar for?
Yeah, I would say the next category that I talk about is growth and scalability.
Mm.
A buyer, the reason a buyer is buying your business is because there is potential growth that they can realize. But they're going to pay you for what you've done, right? Not pay you on the potential. That's one key
Oh,
thing that
darn.
business owners need to
Wait a minute.
understand.
I can't get 10 times the multiple just because, there's
you know,
potential there?
business owners sometimes forget that the buyer is going to be the one using their money, time, resources to grow it, right? So why are they going to pay you for that?
Right.
But they want it there. So, and they want a business that they can scale. So, we'll ask business owners, what would you do to grow your business? If you weren't selling, what would you do? And a lot of times they'll rattle off, 3 to 5 things that can be done to grow the business, grow revenue. And then a buyer will ask them, well, why haven't you done it? And that is a very key question, because it's very
Yeah.
telling. If it was so easy to do all of those things, then why wouldn't you have done it already? Right. And so,
Wow.
making sure that as you're operating your business, you are thinking always about how you can grow.
Mm.
What are other aspects of the market or geography or products and services that you can keep growing? And even when a company is stable, actually a stable company that has a little growth every single year is the most attractive to anyone, because
Mm.
volatility means uncertainty, right? So even when a
Right.
company is going like this, will it keep doing that, or is it
I
going to
mean, yeah.
plateau? Right.
Right.
So even when you get to a mature company, just a little growth is good. And the scalability comes into, it's a bit about having the systems, procedures, people in place, right? So you have the manpower.
Whoop.
you
You
have
talked about that. That was perfect timing.
you have the manpower in place, and systems that are replicatable. But it can also mean, if you're a manufacturing business, do you have capacity to scale your operation? Do you have the right equipment? Or investing in this much equipment will mean I can now grow business by 50% and go sell in different stores. So making sure that the business has what it needs to scale, or that it isn't going to take like an investment more than the price of the business to get it there.
That's an interesting point. The first thing that's still sitting on my mind is that if it was that easy to grow, why didn't you grow it, right? But then the other thing of where do you invest, right? A lot of people will not invest in replacing their equipment because they're thinking of selling it. But then where does that investment, come back to you, right? A simple example, listeners, when you remodel your kitchen, what value does that do in the increase in the value of the house? So what would that line be that you're investing in your company to make sure it can scale, right? The right people, the right processes, the equipment, so on. Where does that line draw where it's still a good investment for the seller and it's a good investment for the buyer?
Yeah, it is a line, and it takes really an analysis of, if you make that investment, are you able to grow revenue and profit with it?
Hmm.
That's really the only thing that is going to get you more dollars on the sale, right? So if you went and bought, $500,000 of new equipment because it was the latest, but it didn't necessarily mean you could produce more or sell for more or get more customers because now you have more capacity, then it's not worth it, right?
Mm.
Because the buyer isn't going to pay you just because you have something fancy. What they're going
Not
to pay
dollar for
you
dollar.
for, yeah, they're going to pay you if that thing can now churn out more revenue and profit. So now your bottom line is higher. And, as your bottom line and your EBITDA grows, you also then can experience higher multiples. So there's growth in just the earnings, right, leading to a higher
Right.
price. But once you start getting over 500,000, $1 million in EBITDA, then you start seeing higher multiples as well. So
Interesting.
it needs to add to the bottom line, is the bottom line.
Is the bottom line. So funny. No, that's perfect though. And it makes sense because, we're holding on to our asset, right? We're not wanting to spend or invest. And if we've got like a 5-year window before we're going to retire, but something needs to be replaced, I mean, that's something to think about too. And no investment, I mean, there's no right time and wrong time for an investment. I mean, I think investments in your growth opportunity occur throughout your life, right? You tend to grow a little bit, then you need to scale to match the growth. That's more people and processes and equipment. Then you're growing a little bit, then you need to scale to match that.
Yeah.
So I find that it's not something that you do just before. It should be something you do throughout the life of your company. But I think
Right.
having these smart kind of conversations and in an analysis of saying, does this product or system or person,
Mm-hmm.
does that increase revenue, which is
Mm-hmm.
the whole goal of the company.
Right. Yeah. It either needs increased revenue or it's more efficient, so we're decreasing costs, both adding to more profit.
Good. Love it. Love it. Simple calculation, right? Everybody should know this stuff. So that's awesome. Okay. So you've given us some really great insights here on what we can do to get top dollar for our company. Let's talk a few minutes about maybe the sales process and what it occurs, because you mentioned 2 to 5 years beforehand, you should be ready to go. But how long does the sales process actually take?
So we find on average it takes about 6 to 9 months to sell a well-priced business.
Mm.
It can take longer the more niche the business is, or if if it has a price premium on it. Sometimes buyers will or sellers will want to go to the market and they'll think about just that perfect strategic buyer who would want to pay them, double what it's actually worth because
Sure, why
it
not?
means so much to them. And right. And we hear, in the news about all of like the slam dunk wins and large companies. I would say this is probably one of the biggest things is that people will hear about large company multiples and large company sales and think that it applies to their small business.
Mm.
And it doesn't. But what it can mean if you go to the market with a high price, that it's going to sit
Sure.
and buyers will think that you're not reasonable and won't even want to inquire.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I know it's not across the board, and you probably can't answer it, completely straight. But I mean, when you're getting in these multiple companies, multiple earnings and EBITDA, and then you look at the small companies, what are their average, times revenue or EBITDA are they getting when they're in the smaller space? I heard someone say
Yeah.
it's somewhere around one and a quarter, maybe it's a little less than one sometimes, and that's very shocking for a client.
Right. I would say, just to kind of give a more general average for across most industries, most of the time, most businesses are going to sell on a multiple of cash flow, and that can be EBITDA, or, once you're working with smaller businesses, there's also something called SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings, which
Mm,
actually adds back the owner's salary. That's the one difference between SDE and EBITDA. Um, and we find that if businesses are having like an EBITDA or an SDE under $1 million, it's usually 2 to 3 times
okay, good.
that metric. And
Okay,
then once you start getting above that, that's when we start to see, the 4 to 5s, and each layer of EBITDA, that means it can go
got it.
higher and higher, and more people come to the party, and different types of buyers come to the party.
Right. And there are many types of buyers, which is really interesting. I mean, you could be selling internally to junior or a partner, right? You could be selling to the competition. You could be selling to a company that wants to acquire or take over parts of it. I mean, there's many different avenues of sellers. And I think you want to be in a good position to be available to more sellers than just the perfect, the perfect alignment,
Right,
right?
right. We don't want to go to market just for that one perfect one, because I also can't tell you how many times business owners have told me, oh, these companies, I would be a perfect fit. Yeah, they're totally going to want me. And, I call them up, and the first thing is, oh, no, they're too small.
Right?
Strategy's done in a phone call. So
Yeah.
you can't just do all of that effort and only be prepared for the select few, which you feel can, overpay for your business. Like, we want to go to
Yeah.
market where we can entertain all kinds of buyers, strategic and financial. And smaller businesses also have, the individual buyers, individual entrepreneurs, or smaller, industry operators who acquire to expand.
I like that. I like that. And there are many reasons why a company would want to buy you. Maybe they want to buy your process and people. Maybe they want to buy your client list, right? Your market, ability in there that they want to add. Maybe there's some different company that has a silo that they want to add to theirs, and yours fits perfectly in there. So I love having those different ideas of the buyers that make you attractive, and to be attractive on all fronts, right? The
Right.
outside, the inside, and the money, right? I mean,
Exactly.
having it good across the way. Okay, so knowing that it takes maybe a year or so, maybe a little less to sell your company. Um, what are some of the problems? I know we could probably have a whole show on the problems, but what are some of the things that we could avoid in advance to make sure that they don't come in and try and discount? Because discounting is what they do, right? That's what a buyer's going to do right off the get go.
Well, yeah, a buyer is going to discount for what they're seeing as the perceived risk of buying your business.
Mhm.
And so that can be for, some of the issues we talked about already. If the books aren't clean, if the owner's too, dependent in the business, and if there's not a lot of, growth and scalability there. And there's others. There's a bunch of potential risk factors. Also, economic risk, what's going
Mm.
on, supply chain issues that we're having, inflation, the employee workforce not wanting to work, all of these things are,
Ah!
making the a buyer see the ability to generate the cash flow in the future as, less certain. And when there's uncertainty, that means they discount.
Mm,
They're not going to pay for that risk. And
right.
so yeah, so the things that come up in a sale process, usually the first major, milestone and hill to cross is the due diligence, right? So, we can be on the market, entertain buyers, and once we come to an agreement, like maybe an offer or purchase agreement, LOI, then the buyer is going to start their due diligence, and that's where they're really going to look under the hood and see what's, verify what has been represented to them. So sometimes, that's where we'll find a discrepancy in financials. Or, you might find, other issues with like the quality of the equipment or, the inventory. Sure. Is there obsolete inventory and more than we thought? Now they don't want to buy as much inventory. Right. We also can run into issues with a landlord, right? So if you are leasing your business location, the buyer needs to qualify for the lease and either get an assignment plus extension, or sometimes negotiate a whole new lease. And that is always a question mark because you never know what your landlord is thinking about that building. And, a lot of times their interests are not aligned with yours. And so,
you think? They're looking for more rent or maybe changing the tenant, altogether. So
they're usually looking for more rent, and it also depends where you are. I mean, here in Southern California, the rents have been going up, and you might have an owner who's been in a building for 20, 30 years and has a sweetheart deal, but the moment a new buyer's coming in, they're going to say, we now want to bring it to market. So if your lease expense, your rent expense goes up 30, 50%, well, that just chopped into their bottom line. So now they're going to offer you less for your business. So the lease matters a lot.
That I never thought to look at the lease, and maybe as you're potentially coming into that 5-year runway, you start renegotiating your lease and making sure that it has a longer or opportunities that if someone comes in that they can keep that lease agreement for a certain number of years. I don't know, but it's planning, right? It's thinking planning in advance.
Yes.
Anticipating the potential risks and problems that come in.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that, and we haven't even gotten into lending. Once you're working with a bank, then the bank, they want a million things. Something's not right for them. You got to fix things. And, there's a lot of different things. Sometimes the appraisals don't come in, right?
Imagine trying to run your business, right? Imagine trying to run your business and have to go through this whole process, right? This is
would not
crazy train, to keep
like by yourself.
I couldn't imagine. That's why someone like you comes in, right? So you help facilitate and work through a lot of these processes and potential problems up front, right?
Exactly. I mean, really our role is, we're coming in, we're valuing the business, we're taking you through a confidential market process, trying to find you the best deal that the market will bear right now, and then manage that process because, a lot of times business owners only sell their business once a lifetime, so if you've never done this before, then you don't know what you don't know. And, people like
there's
me,
a lot there.
People like me, I'm in the business of selling businesses. So I do this every day. So all the things that are coming up, the guidance, what's reasonable, and keeping everyone on the goal, with their eyes on the goal, is a huge difference in the results of your deal.
You know what? And that's just it. You want the most for your money. You want to be able to manage and continue to manage your company while you're going through this process. You absolutely have to have a professional in place on your side that's running quarterback and defense at the same time. I know that didn't matter, but to protect you and keep you on the right track, making sure that you're fielding the calls and the directions and the pieces for it, and you're setting expectations on us business owners of what is going to happen and how we can keep all the balls in the air at the same time. So I think that that's tremendously valuable. Adrianna, you said that there are, you've got all these credentials and you've been doing this stuff for a long time. Is there something someone needs to look for when they're looking for someone to help them sell their business?
Well, I mean, I think I would just say, depending on the size of your business, there are different types of intermediaries. In our business brokerage world, I would say you want to be working with somebody who is a full-time business broker, only working on business sales versus people who are doing commercial and residential real estate as well.
Got it.
And I think you want to see, do they have a lot of listings? The brokers who are, kind of going out there and having a lot of inventory means that they're also attracting a lot of buyers. And, so that's a place you want to be, and you want to know that they're being thorough. I think that that's usually one of the biggest complaints I hear is, they don't feel that a broker who's representing them, gave their business enough time to understand, the full value, or they're, not putting like the best package together because they're not doing enough of, the groundwork. And so I think there's just so many details and moving parts in a business sale that, you want someone who is going to look into the details and make sure that, we're packaging that business in the best light.
You know what? You said something that is really, really important. I think that people forget or don't understand, but there is a tremendous amount of work that goes in to prepare a business for sale, that having an intermediary such yourself that does all that work, and they get paid through the sale of the business. So, I mean, there's a lot of front end work that needs to go
There
on.
is.
It's not like you can, if many of you probably remember, the for sale by owners on your house, oh, that was easy in a market. You just stick up a sign and cross your fingers, you're going to get offers. Not at all when it comes to businesses, and that work that Adrianna and intermediaries like yourself do are essential to getting the maximum dollar for your company. And there's so many loopholes that you just don't want to get in all by yourself. And I think one more thing, correct me if I'm wrong, do you ever want to take an unsolicited offer?
You may want to consider it, but
Okay.
you don't want to jump the gun.
Right.
With unsolicited offers. I mean, sometimes they work out, and people will sell their businesses that way. But it is good to talk to someone like me if you get that and you don't really know how to measure and compare the value, but also you need to protect yourself too, because a lot of times those are coming from competitors or people in the industry who already know you, and they're going to ask you for a laundry list of financials and things like that, and you don't want to overgive or not have the right NDA in place or know what kind of information to give at which point in the process, and
Right.
over divulge too fast and also lose a competitive edge or a bargaining position.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and rarely is it in your benefit when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'd like to buy your business." It's only in their benefit. So,
Yeah, yeah.
golly. Adriana, this has been incredible. This has been really valuable advice that I believe is great for any business in any phase should start thinking about strengthening their company so that when they do want to sell, they're in a better position and they don't have to, juggle all these things last minute. But where can listeners find out more about you and getting their business ready?
Sure. You can check out our website, which is bizbrokersla.com. And you can go on there. You'll see, some information about the process. You can see the types of deals we have, and you can feel free to contact me on that website. And I'm always happy to extend a complimentary market price analysis
Nice.
for business owners who just want to, check in and see where their business is now. And we'll talk about things they can do to make it even better for sale.
Awesome. Awesome. And that's Biz Brokers LA?
Yes,
Perfect.
bizbrokersla.com.
Perfect. And do you work all over California? Do you work in different states?
I mostly work in California, Nevada, and then certain other states, depending on the licensing. Some of the licensing is different state by state,
Okay.
but we also have over 60 offices nationwide. So I'm still a great resource for business owners in other states and can point them in the right direction.
Awesome. Great information. And I'm so glad you're well connected. So, all right, listeners, thanks for listening. I hope you found a couple of ideas to put into your business that will help you be more profitable. And I think getting that business ready and stacked, like I said in the beginning of my introduction, it's a win-win, right? You get more revenue and an enjoyable business now, and you're building an asset that you can sell later on. So Now more than ever, it's important to grow your business and its profits. Don't forget, I'm looking for a few industry leaders and business owners to interview about my book's 12 strategies and how it might impact your industry. Please go download my book and let me know if you'd like to be interviewed. It's available for free only for the next few weeks while I'm interviewing industry leaders. These strategies can help any business increase their revenue, profit, and the value of the company, which is what we've been talking about, without having to pay additional advertising or marketing. Go pick up a copy at trajectoryprofits.com/book-download. And Adrianna and I would love to hear your questions, comments. Tell us what you're doing or what you may have done to get your business ready, and ask us. We'll comment back on the thread. So just let us know what you're doing so we can help you out. And then don't forget to subscribe so that way you can see what's going on next week. And you can always catch Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast players. And we're looking forward to more great profitable information on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit with them. Thanks so much, Adrianna.
Thank you.